Hey everyone, not sure how long this is going to be, maybe a bit of time here. And that's because we're talking about Justin's question, which is, does anyone have a recommendation or alternative to Content Fly? I had the same feedback, honestly, which was I was not exactly in love with their feedback. It came back to one of my favorite paradigms, which is cheap, fast, or good. You get to pick two, not three. So if we're looking at cheap and fast, I would say there are services out there, and a couple of the services that I have found generally are, let's jump into Content Fly. So this, I believe, is about 250, if I recall correctly. Yeah, $250 for 4,000 words. Then you can look at iWriter as well. Fairly similar. Let me jump in and show you because we've used them a fair amount. It's Password Manager, Dashlane there. And what you can see if we jump into order content, you'll see what the cost is. So we want an article. Let's jump down to a good 2,000 word article. It's $33. I've found that at least Elite is better. And then once you tweak it a little bit, you're a little bit higher than that. I need articles again. So we're looking at fast and cheap, which generally means that you are usually not good as an answer. And if you go to request, you can see what they are here. Apparently have $68 sitting in this account. Who knew? But yeah, so if we're moving on from the cheap and fast to the fast and good, those are writers who work for you. We have found that generally they are a little bit more expensive, but they are generally much, much better in the long run. Like any relationship, when you invest in the relationship, you end up getting a lot better results in the long run. That's the approach that we have. Then if you want good and cheap, that's doing it yourself. And even taking time to actually write in your own voice, to create a video like this, and whether that's record audio or record video and passing it off to a writer, that has a ton of value. Again, passing it off to a writer would be more expensive. So good and cheap would be outlining it yourself, doing it yourself, building it out yourself. And that I think is your good and cheap solution. Generally, what I have seen is that when you have the inexpensive places like your I Need Articles, like iWriter, like Fiverr, generally they're less expensive, and you need an editor. Even Upwork to some extent, Upwork will find an individual person, which means you don't have the scalability or burstability, meaning you can't get 100,000 article or 100,000 words written quickly. So if I needed something incredibly, again, fast and cheap, I would go to one of these writing services. But I know that I'm not going to get the best quality. I'm going to need the editing layer. That editing layer ends up adding a fair amount of quality generally, but that editing layer also adds the cost. So it removes some of that cheap portion of it, which should be looked at. Generally, what you want to look at is what you want to write about. Because if you know what you want to write about, you're in a better spot. I think the best platform for this, hands down, is MarketMuse. It is not inexpensive by any stretch of the imagination. However, I think that they make life easier, and here's how. So I just tossed in content creation as a term. Any term works. And if you look, let me move myself over to the other side of the screen, moving to the right. Okay, so in terms of research, what it's saying is it's looking at what terms you need to cover when you talk about content creation to be relevant. And if you're talking about content creation, you're going to talk about blog posts, social media, content marketing, a buyer's journey. You're going to cover all these terms generally to be a well-written article about content creation. If we jump over here to compete, what it looks at is the top 20 positions in Google, and how well it's covered. So you can see 62 is very well covered. It's an ultimate guide in HubSpot. Wouldn't shock me if HubSpot actually is using this tool because it ranks so highly comparatively, compared to the other things that I'm seeing out there. But if you go to the heat map, this is one of my favorite things and most confusing. It looks like a whole bunch of confetti the first time that I looked at it. So I just overlooked it and said, this is useless. But there's a ton that lies here. If you look, here's the top 20 articles in Google, then mixing with the topic. So we can see here that the HubSpot blog, even though it's a 62 out of 100, which is very well covered, it's still not talking about content marketers, which is sort of ironic for HubSpot, content curation, and high quality content. So if I wanted to write an article I could effectively cover where there's a whole bunch of red. So seas of red are where people are not doing a good job of covering that topic. And that ends up meaning that I can jump in there and write an article really, really covering how subject matter experts could have visual content creation and essentially could have, should use their content creation process to build that and be, good content creators. Obviously, I'd have to do it in a more organic and a longer form way to cover a fair amount more of the content and cover it really well. Because, at the heart of this, Google wants to go and deliver the best result and the best answer. Towards that end, you want to deliver the things that are most important. And also, you got to realize that's going to likely be the strongest correlation towards the top of here. Generally, that's what we've seen. So as you go further down, there tends to be a little bit of noise because like creating people, images, strategy. Yeah, this is stuff that we can talk about and cover, but just the word strategy, the word people is not really, really relevant to content creation. But the term people is used frequently in those articles. If you don't want to spend for MarketMuse, you can look at something like Surfer SEO, which a couple friends use and are very happy with thus far in general. So that's kind of how we do it. We also build out, our goal is to cover more. There are a couple more things in MarketMuse that I don't want to show right now, so I won't. But that generally gives you a clearer idea of how we look at content, how we look at strategy, where we're building content, and effectively how we're working on it right now. This is August of 2019 that I'm recording this now. Feel free to reach out if you got questions, because this is a nut that is very hard to crack. And I think anyone who tells you otherwise probably doesn't understand it as deeply or doesn't have enough caring about truly covering topics and truly delivering value for the end customer. So if you got any questions, again, shoot it over to me, Matt at optimizedowner.com, or just hit me up on social media. Thanks.